The first time they told me I wasn't a team player, I was walking out the door with a cardboard box and a cactus that leaned like it was tired of the fluorescent lights. "This shows you're not committed to our team," Lauren said, "the way a dentist tells you a root canal will only pinch." He leaned back in his leather chair, thumbs steepled, the tan he wore in March, the kind you only get when your business trips include oceans. I studied the gold watch he'd set on a legal pad, the way the second hand glided without stutter. He waited for me to sputter, to beg, to unspool my worth in bullet points. "I understand," I said. A muscle twitched near his left eye. "That wasn't the script." "You're terminated effective immediately," he repeated, louder, as if I hadn't heard. "April will escort you to HR for your exit paperwork." I stood. The room smelled like cologne and printer toner and the sugar cookies his assistant left on a side table every Tuesday. I made myself shake his hand and watch him hesitate before taking mine. His grip was cool, careful, like I might be a contagion. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said, because my father taught me to walk out of rooms as if I might want to walk back in someday. On the long carpet out to the sales floor, heads lifted and lowered in a rhythm I knew, a flock pretending the hawk is just weather. Our open office hummed around me, keyboards clattering like rain. I lifted a cardboard file box from the supply closet, the kind with perforated handles that slice your fingers when you load them past their capacity. I had 3 pens that actually worked, a coffee mug my sister bought me, pitch perfect, with a cartoon robot giving a thumbs up, a photo of my parents in front of a barbecue this summer before Dad retired, and the cactus that had somehow found a way to lean toward the narrow strip of window like an act of faith. For years of my life fit with room to spare. April from HR walked beside me jingling keys I didn't need. Tyler Davis, my direct supervisor, the man who wore my numbers like a tailored suit, stepped out of his glass cube and suddenly found the carpet fascinating. He muttered, "Be sure to turn in your badge," without making eye contact, and closed his door. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the polished steel. I didn't look angry. I looked unburdened, like somebody had reached into my ribcage and lifted a stone I'd been pretending wasn't there. Outside, Raleigh's air felt like new paper. The parking lot shimmered with heat even in early spring, and the Honda Civic I'd driven since college blinked at me with tired headlights. I put the cactus on the passenger seat, set the box beside it, and sat with the AC on, hands on the wheel, thinking about nothing and everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler, "Sorry how it went down. Just protocol." Like that absolved anything, like the word protocol could be perfume sprayed on a garbage fire. I turned the phone off and drove home through neighborhoods that hadn't changed since the day Dreyfield Robotics first offered me a job. Back then, the building looked like a spaceship, glass angles and brushed steel letters, the kind of place you imagined you'd grow in.
It's funny how a building can stay the same while the story it tells about you changes completely. At my apartment, the silence met me like a dry sponge soaking up everything I wasn't saying. I left the box on the kitchen counter, freed the cactus from its exile, and opened a beer. I sat on the couch, no laptop on my thighs, no headset around my neck, no calendar alerts pinging like guilt.
For the first time in months, I let the afternoon light move across the wall without asking it to hurry. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were 3 missed calls from my parents and a message from my sister. "Are you okay?" Tyler called me like, "What? Want me to come over?" There was an email from Vanessa Mills, a client-turned-friend who'd left Dreyfield last year for Revulon Publishing. We kept in touch, lunches every few months and jokes about the industry. Her message was simple. "Can you come in tomorrow at 10? The team would like to meet you." I typed back one word, "Yes." Dad picked up on the first ring when I called him. "They did you a favor," he said after I told him, voice warm and steady the way only a man who's been knocked down and got back up can be. "How's that?" I asked. "They told you who they are," he said. "Now you don't have to pretend." Mom got on the line next. "What do you need, honey? We can drive up this weekend. Your father will make chili." "I'm okay," I said, surprised to hear that I meant it. "Actually, I think this might be good." "Then it is," she said, and I could see her smile in the sound of it. That night I slept like I'd put down a sack of bricks I'd been carrying so long I'd grown around the weight. In the morning, I put on the good suit I wore to client meetings that always, somehow, ended up featuring Tyler and never me. The mirror told me I looked like a person who knew his own value. The mirror, for once, was right. Revlon Publishing's lobby didn't have Dreyfield's spaceships and steel aesthetic. It was warm wood and clean light, bookshelves with actual books, a receptionist who knew my name before I introduced myself. Vanessa greeted me with a hug that felt like an anchor thrown into deep water. "I usually hate hugging," I said. She laughed. "We only hug people we actually want to hire." Come on. They'd already called 3 of my former clients, including Abbott Manufacturing, the $2 million deal Dreyfield celebrated by taking everyone but me out for drinks. Revlon knew exactly what I did, not the press release version, but the real thing. I didn't sell hardware so much as I solved people's problems. We talked markets and plans and how I'd build a new business development wing from scratch. Somewhere between the second and third meeting of the morning, they offered me the position, Regional Director of Business Development. Double my old salary. Commission I didn't have to decode like a puzzle. A path drawn in ink, not pencil. "When can you start?" Vanessa asked. "Now," I said. "Please." They gave me an office with a window and a door that shut and a team of 3 sharp associates who weren't waiting to leave at 5 because they actually liked what they were doing. There was a company card that didn't require begging for pre-approval to fly to Chicago to close a deal. There were systems that made sense. It felt like stepping into a house where the lights turned on when you hit the switch. For 2 weeks, everything clicked. We built a pipeline out of nothing but my Rolodex and their vision. Clients answered my calls on the first ring. The sort of inbox messages I used to read on Sunday nights with dread were replaced by, "Let's try that idea," and "Great work, run with it." I sent connection requests on LinkedIn to former teammates at Dreyfield. Most accepted. A few messaged congratulations with the kind of relief people feel when a prisoner escapes and sends a postcard. Lawrence and Tyler didn't respond. I didn't care. Then the cease and desist arrived. The envelope was heavy linen, the kind of paper that smells faintly of money. The letterhead bristled with a law firm name that sounded like a British boarding school. "Mr. Monroe is in violation of his non-compete agreement," it read, very sure of itself. "He is hereby ordered to terminate his employment with Revlon Publishing immediately or face legal action." I stared at my name typed in bold like they were etching it into stone. I hadn't signed a non-compete. I would have remembered signing a document that basically declared me unemployable in my own town. I forwarded the letter to Revlon's legal team and felt the old anxiety gnaw my stomach with familiar teeth. "Don't worry," Revlon's counsel said when she called. "Send us your onboarding paperwork from Dreyfield. We'll handle this." At home that night, I spread 4 years of Dreyfield in paper form across my kitchen table. Offer letter with the salary they never really paid, employment agreement, performance reviews that said exceeds expectations like a consolation prize. No non-compete. The next morning, Dreyfield's attorneys emailed a PDF. My name, my signature, dated 3 years ago, right after I won Rookie of the Year. The document prohibited me from working for any competitor within 100 miles for 12 months. I didn't remember seeing it, much less signing it, but the signature looked like mine, eerily, deceitfully like mine. "Did you sign anything during a performance review?" Revlon's counsel asked. Something they said was routine? Sign here, here, and here? A memory bloomed like a bruise, Lawrence handing me a stack of pages, tiny post-it notes fluttering like warning flags. "Just updated policy acknowledgments," he'd said, smile like a shark behind glass. "Everybody signs them." I'd signed without reading because the meeting had run long and my client call was in 5 minutes, and you don't say, "Hold on while I lawyer this." I'd trusted them with my signature the way you trust a neighbor to feed your cat. Revlon's counsel exhaled. "They'll claim we're a direct competitor. It's absurd, but they're pressing hard. Strap in. It'll get ugly." The ugliness arrived on schedule. One of my old clients forwarded an email. Lawrence had hinted I'd left with confidential files, asked whether I'd contacted them to shift their business. I told him you always handled yourself with integrity. The client wrote, "Is this nonsense going to be a problem?" I forwarded the message to our legal team, my hands shaking in a way they hadn't since college finals. I could live with fighting fair. I couldn't live with lies. That evening, a number I didn't recognize lit my phone. Jared? It's Jessica from accounting. Her voice was low, conspiratorial, like she was calling from inside a closet. I'm not supposed to be calling you, but you were always decent to me. You need to know what they're saying isn't true. What are they saying? I asked, though I knew. That you downloaded your entire client folder and deleted the originals. I was in the server room the next morning. I saw Lawrence at your drive. He copied everything and then flagged your folder as compromised. Later, he told IT he suspected you. My jaw clenched. Would you tell that to my attorney? A beat of silence. I can't. Not on the record. I need this job. She exhaled hard. Just be careful. They're going to fight dirty. She hung up. I stared out my office window at the Raleigh skyline going purple, and for the first time since I'd walked out with my cactus, anger found me. It wasn't the flare-up kind. It sank its roots in. The weeks that followed were a chessboard. Drefield's lawyers hurled allegations like confetti, breach of contract, theft, corporate espionage, so exaggerated it would have been funny if it wasn't my life. Revelin's counsel parried, requested discovery, filed motions. I met with our legal team and learned about billable hours and patience the way marathoners learn about blisters and pain, intimately. We need leverage, my attorney said, the way surgeons say scalpel. Right now, it's your word against theirs on the non-compete. Proving a forged document will be expensive. We need a pattern. Something bigger. Bigger arrived in a text from Tyler. We need to talk. Not about the lawsuit. It's important. I should have ignored him. I didn't. We met at a coffee shop whose chalkboard menu tried to make espresso sound like a spiritual practice. He looked wrecked, sleepless eyes, collar wilted, the shine scrubbed off. He took his cap off and turned it in his hands like a prop suddenly without a script. I can't be tied to this conversation, he started, and I waited in silence like the ocean waits for confessions from storm drains. The non-compete, he said. It's not just you. He's been doing this for years, gets people to sign routine paperwork during reviews, then adds pages later. The signatures are real. The documents aren't what people signed. My mouth went dry. Why are you telling me? He stared at his coffee. Because you're not the first, but you're the first who fought back with resources. And because I thought this was just how business worked. That's what he told me when he offered me a cut. A cut of what? Tyler looked up, eyes bloodshot, shame raw. Commissions. The word cracked open something in my memory, every adjustment, that took my calculated commission and shaved it like a carpenter planing a plank. You end up with sawdust and an apology. Explain, I said. I found the spreadsheets on Lawrence's machine, Tyler said. 2 sets. One with the real commissions, based on contract amounts and our stated percentages. One with what people were actually paid. The difference funneled into an account labeled Executive Performance Fund. The CFO signs off. They call it leadership allocation. You confronted him? He said it's standard at our level. He said I'd earned a seat at the table. I have a mortgage, Jared. Kids. I took the deal. It makes me sick every day. I wanted to hate him. Instead, I thought about the way hunger for security can twist good people into versions of themselves they don't recognize. I asked the question anyway, why now? He managed a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. Because they're not just trying to stop you. They're building a paper trail to pin fraud on you, the Abbott deal. They're backdating emails, revising numbers to make it look like you inflated the contract to bump your commission. They'll say you stole files to cover it. I didn't inflate anything, I said. Abbott will back me. They know. That's why they're trying to poison the well. He pulled out his phone and opened photos. Screenshots of spreadsheets, emails, bank transfers, receipts like breadcrumbs out of a dark wood. He slid the phone across the table. I keep copies of things. It's the only way I sleep. Send them, I said. If I do, I'm done. You already are, I said quietly. The only question is whether you walk out or get dragged. He stared at me for a long heartbeat. Then his thumbs moved. File after file arrived on my phone, each ping a nail in a coffin I'd stopped believing would ever be built. The documents changed my attorney's posture from defensive to predatory. "This isn't just a contract dispute," she said, flipping through printouts. "This is systematic fraud, wage theft, securities implications if they misreported compensation expenses." She tapped one cell on a spreadsheet. "This number alone. Good God. But we had a problem. Tyler wouldn't testify publicly. Anonymous screenshots weren't enough to nuke a corporation. We needed another witness. Someone who'd been burned and didn't care if the fire looked higher. His name was Kevin Blackwell, top performer in the Eastern region 2 years ago. He'd left under a rumor cloud, drinking problem unreliable, the kind of undercurrent that stains a man even when you can't see the source. I never believed it. Kevin was tight as a coiled spring, jotted notes like a court reporter, wore wedding ring and pressed shirts and decency like armor. I found him on LinkedIn and sent a message. "Need to talk about Drayfield commissions and Lawrence Bennett. Urgent." He responded in minutes. "Have been waiting for this call." We met in a quiet park under an oak that had seen men tell truths and lies for 100 years. Kevin looked thinner, lines carved around his mouth deep as canyon shadows. "They fired me because I found the same spreadsheets," he said without small talk. "Lawrence tried to say I fudged numbers. I made the mistake of showing what I'd found to the CFO. He laughed. Next week a client complained I'd shown up to a meeting drunk. I was at my kid's soccer game. 2 weeks later, gone. But not before I copied everything. Everything? Bank records, side emails, vendor kickbacks. They inflated project costs, skimmed the surplus. I can trace at least 4 years to accounts tied to the executive team. Why didn't you go to the authorities?" His mouth pulled tight. "Because after they fired me, a man in a nice suit sat next to my wife at the hospital cafeteria. She's a nurse. Told her it would be a shame if her shift schedule changed in a way that made childcare impossible. A man at my kid's school asked whether late tuition payments could affect participation. Nothing spoken directly, just suggestion. And I blinked. You kept the evidence." He nodded. "Encrypted drive offsite. I told myself I was waiting for the right war. We're at war," I said. "And I have an army." Revlon didn't flinch when I brought Vanessa into the conference room and laid it all out. She read quickly, jaw clenching, the little vein at her temple ticking like a metronome. "Distance ourselves," she repeated when I said I'd understand if they wanted to back away. "Jared, we hired you because your spine is straight. We're with you. Not just to protect our hire. To fix an industry we love." The next 2 months were a masterclass in pressure. With Kevin's evidence and Tyler's screenshots, my attorney didn't just move to quash the non-compete. She filed counterclaims, unpaid wages, punitive damages, defamation. Revlin's legal team joined with the kind of resources you only see in movies. They compiled affidavits from former sales reps whose commissions had mysteriously shrunk. They subpoenaed records. They prepped me until my own calendar looked like a deposition. We didn't stop at civil suits. We walked the file boxes to the state attorney general's office and the SEC. The AG's investigator, a woman named Helen with gray hair and eyes like weather, thumbed through a ledger and whistled. "You boys brought us a feast." "I'd prefer you call it justice," my attorney said. "Sometimes they're the same meal," Helen replied. Federal agents entered Drayfield's headquarters on a Wednesday morning with jackets and warrants and a quiet that told the whole building about to be emptied of lies. I wasn't there, but Tyler texted me a running commentary like a man narrating his own ship sinking. "They're walking Lawrence out," he wrote. "CFO too. IT is handing over servers. Someone is crying in marketing." Drayfield dropped their lawsuit against me 2 days later without the dignity of a press release. The business press picked up the fraud investigation the way coastal winds pick up smoke. Drayfield Robotics executive team under investigation for commission scheme. The headline read, and under it, a photo of Lawrence looking into a middle distance like he was waiting for a better world to arrive. Meanwhile, I worked. That was the most unexpected part. In the space where panic had lived, purpose set up a desk. We built the Revlon division deal by deal, client by client. When former Drayfield clients called to ask what was true, I gave them the same answer my father taught me. Everything I tell you, I'm prepared to prove. It's amazing what that sentence buys you in a market starving for straight talk. Then Lawrence emailed from his personal account. We should talk. I can explain. Lunch. I forwarded it to my attorney, who advised me to let the absence of oxygen do what it always does to fires. 3 months after my termination, the court ordered Drayfield to pay me $147,000 in back commissions and damages. When the check arrived by courier, it was heavier than it should have been, like the past 3 months had attached weights to paper. I didn't cash it that day. I set it upright on my desk and looked at it like a photograph. This is what the truth looks like when it has numbers. A week later, another call I didn't expect. Jessica from accounting again, this time breathing normally. I gave a statement, she said, to the AG. Others did too. I'm leaving. It'll be tight for a while, but I can look at myself in the mirror again. You did the right thing, I told her, meaning it with the kind of clarity that doesn't need decoration. And Tyler, she asked. He's cooperating, I said. It will save him from the worst of it. But the old life is gone. Maybe he can build a better one, she whispered. The story left the business pages and settled into court dockets. Lawrence pled to avoid a trial that would dissect his every misdeed on public record. The CFO did the same. Tyler wasn't charged, but the industry has better memory than people give it credit for. Drayfield's board resigned one by one, as if musical chairs had stopped and all the chairs were on fire. The company was sold at a quarter of its valuation to a competitor who quietly replaced the logo and never issued a welcome email. I didn't gloat. I bought coffee for my team and asked what tools would make their work easier. We fixed a CRM process that had made reps feel like they worked for the software instead of the software working for them. We wrote a commission plan 1 page long that used math a high schooler could understand. We shared it with candidates from around the industry, and word got around. Revlon didn't just pay, it respected. In the quiet after the storm, I drove to my parents' house for dinner. Dad had retired 6 months earlier, and Mom had stopped working on Saturdays. She said it was because she preferred the way sunlight fell through the kitchen window exactly at 1:30. We sat on the back porch with beers and mosquitoes and the smell of cut grass, and Dad said, "Proud of you, son. Not because you won, but because you didn't turn into them while you were winning." I wanted to, I admitted. Wanting and doing, he said, raising his bottle. That's the difference between a headline and a life. A year later, I stood in a glass-walled conference room at Revlon and presented quarterly results to a sales team that had become a small city. We doubled revenue in the division. The whiteboard behind me was crowded with plans that no longer felt like hope disguised as marketing. After the meeting, Vanessa tugged me aside and grinned like a conspirator. Board approved it, she said. Vice President. Effective next month. Try not to act surprised on the official call. I hugged her because I meant it. Then I went back to my office and sat with the version of myself who used to count victories in unattended happy hours. I still drove the Honda. It rattled a little under 70 and creaked like it was telling me stories about where we'd been. People asked why I hadn't bought a new car. I said I liked the way this one vibrated at stoplights, like a reminder, the fastest way up still isn't cutting corners. Later that afternoon, a message slid into my inbox from Kevin Blackwell. A photo, his wife in graduation regalia, nurse practitioner now, 2 kids grinning, Kevin in a cheap suit that fit like integrity. Thanks, he'd written, for lighting the match and not burning the house down. Thank you, I typed back, for saving the kindling. There were other echoes. A former junior rep from Drayfield, Marcy, joined our team and cried when she realized her first commission check matched the percentage she'd calculated at her kitchen table. I thought it was just me, she whispered. I thought I was bad at math. A client sent a basket of cookies with a note. You keep your word, so here's something sweet to go with it. I took 1 cookie, left the rest in the break room, and watched our interns descend on them like sparrows. Sometimes, late in the day when most people had gone and the building hummed with the quiet of machines sleeping, I opened the top desk drawer and saw the old check from the court, now photocopied and pinned beneath a magnet. I'd cached the original long ago. It had turned into software licenses and travel for reps who needed to see clients face-to-face and a coffee machine nobody had to pay for out of pocket. But I kept the copy because it wasn't about the money. It was a receipt that the world, when pushed hard enough in the right places, can tilt toward right. Months passed. I stopped waking in the night imagining emails I needed to send. I started running again, the loop around the lake that taught me to love the sound of my own breath. I bought a secondhand guitar from a shop that smelled like cedar and strings, practiced until my fingers hurt, played badly, got a little better, learned how to fail in new ways that weren't public. And then one day, out of nowhere, a letter arrived with a familiar logo softened by a new name. The new owners of Drayfield, now operating under a bland umbrella, were settling the class action suit with former sales reps. A copy of the distribution schedule listed names and amounts. I touched some of those names like beads on a rosary. I knew birthdays, tasted the beer you prefer, remembered the way your voice sounded when a client said yes. Justice isn't a check. But sometimes it's not a check. On a Thursday in late fall, Vanessa and I walked the floor of our growing department. The new hires looked up from their screens the way new hires look when the boss who hired them proves to be the same person in the hall as in the interview. We paused by the wall we'd left intentionally blank. "We should put something there," she said. "A mission statement?" I teased. "A photograph," she said. "Something real. Not stock. Maybe the team at the volunteer build last weekend. You with that terrible hammer form." "My hammer form is excellent," I objected. "Your hammer form is a liability," she said, smiling. We ordered a framed print, black and white, of a crew of sweaty people in borrowed hard hats laughing like they'd invented it. Under the photo, we hung a small brass strip engraved with 6 words that weren't trite when you've bled for them. Tell the truth. Pay people fairly. Build. Sometime after that, long enough that the days didn't belong to the lawsuit anymore, a text arrived from an unknown number. "Jared. It's Lawrence." I stared at the little gray bubble. He asked if I could meet. He wanted to apologize, explain, rewrite history with adjectives. I deleted the text. Not out of anger. Out of health. There are rooms you don't walk back into, even if the doors are open. On the anniversary of the day I carried a cactus across an office I no longer worked in, I drove by the old building. The new owner's sign was already weathered. The fountains in front were turned off. A couple in suits stood by the revolving door pointing at something on a tablet. I parked across the street and thought about the Rookie of the Year plaque gathering dust in a manager's closet somewhere. It doesn't matter who keeps your old trophies when you're busy making a life you actually want. I called Dad on speaker and told him where I was. "Drive on," he said, laughter in his voice. "There's better barbecue on your side of town." "Always with the barbecue," I said. "Always with the truth," he said. "Go eat. Then go back to work you don't hate." On the way to the restaurant, I passed a lot where a young man in a tie was pacing, phone to his ear, looking like the whole world was lodged in his throat. I wanted to roll down the window and tell him, "Hey, it's going to hurt, but maybe you just got freed." Instead, I honked and waved. He looked up, confused, and waved back. He'll figure it out. That night, after emails and calls and a last-minute contract review that didn't turn my stomach into a knot, I sat on my balcony with the guitar and a beer and the skyline blinking like it was winking at me for once. The air smelled like fall and distant fried food. I played 3 chords in a row that sounded almost like a song and said out loud to nobody, "We're all right." Because we were. Because sometimes revenge isn't a spectacle or a headline or a moment where you slam a door and everyone claps. Sometimes revenge is a series of quiet choices to be the person you said you were even while someone else tries to unmake you. Sometimes revenge is a commission plan in plain English and a junior rep who stops apologizing for asking questions and a client who says, "Thank you for not lying to me." Sometimes revenge is a cactus on a windowsill growing toward light it couldn't see when it started. The next morning, I arrived early. I walked the floor, said good morning by name, fixed the fruit bowl because that's leadership, too. In my office, I opened the top drawer and looked at the copy of the check for a second and then closed it without touching it. There were emails to answer. There was a team to grow. There were problems to solve. There was a wall with a photograph to pass that reminded me what we were doing here. When the calendar alert pinged quarterly all hands, I carried my laptop into the conference room and caught my reflection in the glass. I didn't look angry. I didn't look tired. I looked like a man who learned that the fastest way to win is to stop playing someone else's game and build your own field. Morning, Vanessa said, stepping in beside me. Ready? Always, I said, and meant it. Tell them the commission plan update first, she said. Then the new client rollout, I said. And remember the cookie basket story. Never forget the cookie basket story. She laughed. Let's go make it boring for any reporter who shows up. We did. We talked numbers and plans and what next month looked like if we kept our word to each other and to our clients. People asked questions because they weren't afraid. I answered because I wasn't either. When it was over, we cleaned up our cups and left the room better than we found it. Back at my desk, I opened an email from a name I didn't recognize. A recent grad. Mr. Monroe, I heard your story in a podcast. How did you not get bitter? I typed back, I did. Then I did the work anyway. Then I stopped. He replied with a gif of a cactus raising its arms like a cheerleader. I laughed out loud in a quiet office, and the sound was good. On my way out that night, I paused by the wall photo. Under it, someone had stuck a post-it note that said, in messy block letters, this. More of this. I left it there. Not everything needs to be formalized to be true. Outside, the evening air tasted like rain that wasn't sure if it wanted to fall. I unlocked the Honda and patted the dashboard like a dog you love even though he chews your shoes. The engine turned over with a familiar complaint. We pulled into traffic, me and the old car that had carried younger versions of me to worse jobs for less money. The skyline winked again. The red lights made a river ahead. I didn't think about Lawrence or Tyler or courtrooms or checks. I thought about tomorrow's onboarding of 2 new reps and whether the coffee filters had been restocked and the way Vanessa's son had handed me a plastic hammer at the build and said, "You hit the nail like this," and how I'd learned, again, that there are always better teachers. I drove home with the windows cracked and let the night slip in and the city breathe with me. Somewhere in that dark, an email was flying toward my inbox from a client who would make next quarter easier. Somewhere else, a young rep was calculating her commission and discovering it matched. Somewhere, a cactus in an old office leaned toward light it couldn't see. At a red light, I remembered my father's line and set it into the empty car. A good salesman sells products. A great salesman solves problems. It's corny until you need it, and then it's a map. The light turned green. I went.